Today is November the 3rd, 2023. It is day 3 of my Nomad November journey. It's 2:10 p.m. Oh god. I'm late for school. God, why does this always happen? Shit, bro. I don't understand. I cannot afford to do this. I can't afford to be late. Look, I'm gonna get a detention. My class rank is gonna drop. My GPA is gonna drop. Fuck, dude. Okay, I don't do shit. I don't know what I'm doing here. Alright. Oh, shit. Wait. I dropped out. You see, a lot of people don't know this, but I actually dropped out of college halfway through my freshman year. And believe me when I tell you that I have absolutely no regrets. You see, my time in college was easily one of the worst times of my life. And that is for a very good reason. Okay, that little morning sequence that you just saw, that wasn't a skit, that wasn't me acting, that was me remembering. Those were Vietnam flashbacks. As a matter of fact, I need to go ahead and meditate to calm my nerves. Now don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for the time that I spent in college. Although it was a very small amount of time, I'm grateful that I went to college, because had I not gone, I wouldn't have known that I hated it so much. And here's the thing, if you've never been to college, I would suggest that you at least try it. Okay, me personally, I decided to go to community college because I didn't want to go $100,000 into debt just to figure out whether or not I wanted to be in college. Turns out I didn't. So I turned down the opportunity to go to my dream school, University of Texas at Austin, which I had worked 2.5 to 3 years to get into. I turned down that opportunity to go to community college because I had the wherewithal to know that maybe college wouldn't be for me. And I am very grateful for that decision every single day. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and write that down. You see, it's my personal belief that student loans are the single most diabolical aspect of modern day first world society. And let me explain why. Although I shouldn't need to explain why. Okay, if you have student loans, then you know. Gratefully, thankfully, I can't relate. But if you have student loans, then you know that that is a very stressful way to live. If you have debt in general, then you know that that's a very stressful way to live. And like I said earlier, I had the wherewithal to understand at an early age that maybe it's not the best idea to accumulate $100,000 of student loan debt in my early 20s, or even $50,000, or even $25,000. Now, I understand the justification behind student loan debt. Okay, yes, a college degree will open up a lot of job opportunities which you could hypothetically use to pay back the student loans. But you're not guaranteed to get a job unless you go to college and get a degree in a STEM field, right? If you get a STEM degree, then more often than not, you're going to be able to get a job. Your job prospects will be good. This, in my opinion, is a flawed system. It is an inherently flawed system. And the reason why is that it doesn't encourage people to do what they're actually passionate about. And I find it kind of interesting because when I went to Spain, or really just Europe in general, Spain, Switzerland, and what I've seen from the Netherlands, I noticed that the infrastructure, for example, is much more advanced over there than it is here in America. And part of me wonders if maybe that's because people are going into engineering, i.e. civil engineering, and they're not actually passionate about infrastructure. They're not passionate about doing the best possible job that they can. They're just passionate about their paycheck. I don't know. This is just my personal theory. Not even a theory. This is just a question that I have that I don't really have the answer to. But if you look around you, you might start asking that same question. Okay, why is American society so far behind in certain aspects than some of these other countries where education is much more accessible for the common person? I don't know. That's just my personal theory. You answer that question how you want, but I know for me personally, I believe that that's the answer. I believe that it's because the way that the college system is structured here is not necessarily the most ideal and advantageous for the people who are using it. I feel as if the college system in America is exploitative, whereas the college system in Europe, and in particular Western Europe, is primarily focused on educating. It's educational rather than exploitative. And that's not to say that you can't get a good education at an American college, okay? Obviously, most of the world's top universities, Harvard, Yale, MIT, etc., all of the Ivy League schools and all of these really, really great private schools are here in America. Okay, if you want to get the best education, you probably should come to the US. However, I believe that it's more often than not, for the average person, it's just not worth the trade-off. Because the average person isn't going to Harvard or Yale or Stanford. Those places have acceptance rates below 10%. Okay, so I believe that for the average person, I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to college, but I do believe that maybe you should consider community college if you are going to go to college, and you use that time to figure out what you actually want to do, what you're actually passionate about, rather than just thinking about how you can get a degree which will get you the most money. And I just want to reiterate that I'm not against college by any means. I am not against college, as you will see later on in this video, but I don't know, for me personally, I just find that a lot of people, they don't go to college because they want to go. They go to college because they feel like they need to go. And this wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't for student loan debt. Okay, an 18-year-old who feels obligated to pull out tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, I feel like I shouldn't even need to explain this. Okay, this should be common sense. But an 18-year-old that feels obligated to pull out tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, I don't see how that's a recipe for success in the long term. As a matter of fact, that seems like a recipe for chaos and disaster over time. And just a little fun fact, if you file for bankruptcy, which oftentimes allows you to relinquish certain debts, most of your debts really, your student loan debts don't apply. So you can't escape your student loan debts. You have to pay them off. You will have to pay your student loan debts off with interest. And once again, I think that this is exploitative. I think that this is asinine, for lack of a better term. And honestly, to be quite frank, diabolical. Okay, it's evil. This is an evil way of extracting as much money as possible from students. In exchange for what? You see, people talk about the college experience with the fraternities and the parties and all of these different things. Bro, listen, let me tell you something, okay? You do not need to go to college to have a good experience. You don't need to go to college to learn how to socialize with people. Take that same money that you would use to go to college, that same $20,000 a year, or even a semester for some people, and use it to travel the world. And I can guarantee you with 100% certainty that you will learn more from traveling the world than you will from sitting behind a desk at some auditorium with 200 other students. Guarantee you. And if you don't believe me, try it for yourself. I find it kind of interesting that so many people, they see college as this secure option. They see it as the most secure option, which, to my point earlier, getting a job is not a guarantee after college, by any means. Okay, no school has a 100% post-graduation employment rate. No school in the world. But everybody has to pay. Some people get scholarships, to be fair, but there aren't enough scholarships for everyone. Therefore, it's a gamble. It might be a calculated gamble, but it's a gamble nonetheless. And I understand that in life, everything is a gamble. Every day is a gamble because you don't know if you'll make it to the end of each and every day. You just don't know. However, what I can say is that a lot of people, they don't gamble for a reward, a potential reward rather, that actually matters to them. They feel obligated to take the path that everyone else is taking because they don't want to be ostracized by society. And I think the worst part about this is not that 18-year-olds are doing this, it's that older adults are encouraging 18-year-olds to do this. They're encouraging 18-year-olds who don't know what they want to do in life to pull out these loans, to go to college, to have this arbitrary college experience. For what? For what? Okay, some of these people should not be in college. There are a lot of people who are in college who should not be there. There are people who aren't in college that should be there. But nobody in college or not in college should be paying $100,000 for the same education, or possibly an inferior education on average, than you could get in some of the Western European countries. You might disagree with me on that, but I don't see where there are any holes in this logic. Okay, this just seems like common sense. If you believe that school is worth $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever, you do you. But I know for me, I made that decision at 18 that simply wasn't a worthwhile trade-off, and I'm very, very, very grateful that I did it. Now, in addition to community college, there are other viable alternatives for regular public or private university. I know you heard that. Oh God. For example, you can go to trade school. Trade school is a viable alternative. And it's interesting because in the Netherlands, my girlfriend was telling me about how the education system works out there. And basically, you have multiple different levels of primary school, if you will, that students can test into. And some tracks lead to trade school, some tracks lead to college, and some tracks lead to university. And depending on which track you're on, of course your curriculum will be different. So if you are not aspiring to be a doctor, but rather an electrician, your classes will reflect that from an early age. Now, although I believe that this might be flawed as well, okay, there's really no perfect education system. I think that this might be flawed as well because it kind of categorizes students a little early, in my opinion. I also believe that this is a step in the right direction, primarily because it takes into account nuance. It takes into account nuance, and even more importantly, you don't have 18-year-olds taking out $100,000 in student loan debt. You don't have 18-year-olds taking out $100,000 in student loan debt, and you especially don't have them taking out that sort of debt for classes and degrees that they're not even going to use. And I think another benefit of that system is that they're not subject to the same indoctrination that we as Americans are subject to, in terms of college being the ideal and, in some cases, only option for success, because that is simply not true. When I was in high school, I remember they had all of these different flags of different colleges, and it was kind of not even implied, it was almost explicitly understood that you pretty much had to go to college to be successful. And why was this the propaganda that we were receiving? Why did we receive this indoctrination? Well, it's simple. Because the people who were telling us this went to college themselves. Teachers, of course, have to go to college to become teachers. So they told us that, hey, you have to do what we did because we don't see another route. But to my point earlier, trade school is an option. Entrepreneurship is another option. That is a viable alternative. A lot of people, they think that entrepreneurship is risky. It's a gamble. You don't know if you're going to make your money back from any loans that you pull out or the savings that you invest into your endeavors. But let me tell you this, okay? Actually, I have a quick little story for you. One of my friends, he works at a factory, I believe, or something like that. It's a physical labor job. And by no means do I believe that people who work physical labor, blue-collar, manual work jobs are inferior to people who don't. However, this friend right here, who, by the way, went to college, got a 4-year degree, he went to college, he ended up working at this job, and we were talking about working versus being an entrepreneur. And what he was telling me was that he enjoys the stability and security that comes from working at a job. And listen, okay, I don't want to be the one to rain on his parade or anybody else's parade. However, I do take it upon myself to be the bearer of truth. If you fundamentally believe that business is unstable, then that means that your job is even less stable. Because guess what? If you're working at a job, that means that more often than not, unless you work for the government, which that's even more unstable, but that's a different discussion for a different day. If you work at a job, more often than not, you're working for a business. And if a business is unstable, what is the first thing they're going to do to cut costs? They're going to fire you. They're going to cut the employees. They're going to do layoffs, mass layoffs. And I brought this up to my friend Bryce, who also has this entrepreneurial mindset that I have. And I remember asking him, why do people think that a job is any more secure than a business? He decided to play devil's advocate and he said, well, I agree, but they could get other jobs. And I said, well, so can I. You see, if I have experience operating a business, I can start a new business or I can just go and get a job. Right now, I could go and get a social media marketing job and run some company's YouTube channel. I can do that because I have expertise in this field. I understand the game because I've done things that most people will never do in their lifetimes. I have a certain level of expertise in that field. Whereas if I had simply gone to college, I would have gotten a cookie cutter education on it, but I wouldn't necessarily understand it to that same extent. And let me just say this. Please, for the love of God, do not go to college to learn social media marketing or anything that pertains to social media. Just don't do it. Do not do that. You can learn all of that stuff in 30 days or less.
And that is the benefits overlaid strategy, and you can easily create this one as well in Canva. Moving on to the next strategy.
Okay. So this is an example of a social media marketing course that you can take to learn social media marketing. Obviously, this doesn't just apply to social media marketing. This applies to some other skills that would pertain to entrepreneurship. These are some of the other courses that I've taken recently. And guess what? I paid for all of those courses. Albeit at a very heavily discounted rate, but I did pay for that education. You see, believe it or not, I'm actually a proponent of paying for education. On this Kindle right here, I have purchased many books. As a matter of fact, I've read more books in the past few years on this Kindle than I have probably my entire schooling career. So that's what, 19 years? The first 18, 19 years of my life, minus the first 5, so 14 years versus the past 2 or 3 years. Why? It's because I'm reading things that actually apply to my life. I understand what I want in life, therefore I construct my personal curriculum accordingly. And with school and college in particular, it can be very difficult to do this, especially in the first year or two that you're in college. And I'm saying this to say that I'm not anti-college and I'm definitely not anti-education. As a matter of fact, and I think a lot of people need to hear this, so let me zoom in. Okay, you need to really pay attention to this. Dropping out of school does not mean that you no longer get an education. It simply means that you're transferring into the school of life. You are transferring to the school of life. And the school of life has a very different way of teaching things. You see, the school of life, it gives you the test first, and then you learn the lesson afterwards. For example, with me, I've been tested various times throughout my YouTube journey, and I've made various mistakes, but I learned my lessons from them, and I've adjusted accordingly. Hence why I'm reinvesting into my education. I realized I still have some things to learn. I am not by any means done with educating myself. I'm educating myself until the day that I die because I understand that in order to progress in life, I need the right information. I need to have the right information, and if you have this, if you have a computer or you have a phone, you have access to the information. How do I know that you have one of those two devices or some sort of electronic device? Because you're watching this video. That's why. You're watching this video, therefore you have access to all of this education. I've dropped a lot of game on my channel. Whenever I've learned these lessons, I've passed them on to you. And if you've been following my channel for the past few years, you've had that benefit. I've been able to hopefully save you the time that I can no longer get back. Now, I think it's important that I do sort of make my credentials known, because if I was somebody who was always getting low grades in school, was skipping class and getting in trouble and whatnot, then of course it would make sense that I wouldn't go to college. But I was a straight A student in high school. I never got below a 90 out of 100 in any class in high school. Never finished a class with anything below a 90. I think the lowest grade I got was a 90 or a 91, and that was in French. And that's primarily because I didn't really want to learn French, but it was just part of the curriculum. At that point in my life, I wasn't really concerned with being a well-rounded person. I was just focused on getting good grades so that I could get into the University of Texas at Austin, which I was able to get into, to my point earlier. You see, here in Texas, we have a rule where if you're in the top 10% of your graduating class by class rank, then you automatically get admission into any public university in the state of Texas. The exception being the University of Texas at Austin, where at least at the time that I graduated, you have to be top 7%, and I barely cracked it. I believe I was between 70 and 80, somewhere in the 60s or 70s in terms of class rank, in a class of 1,100 people. Like I said, I had straight A's in high school, and I was always a gifted and talented and intelligent student. I'm not saying all of this stuff to brag, okay? I don't believe in bragging, because ultimately, I don't think that school, even primary school, is a good way of measuring people's intelligence, because different people thrive in different environments. It just so turned out that the school, or the schools that I went to, were well suited for my learning style. Or not even for my learning style, but they were well suited for the way in which I processed information. So yeah, I guess my learning style. For other people, they don't learn very well in that sort of environment. Now, I believe that I'm the type of person that can extract these lessons from pretty much any situation and in any environment, but not everyone's like that. And it's important to understand that, because a lot of people, especially younger people, they think that because they don't have high grades, that means that they're not smart. And that is not true. Okay, the friend that I was talking about earlier, the one who works at the factory job, and I'm not saying all of this to put him on blast, this is just my genuine observations about him and about people. He is actually one of the smarter people that I know, but he doesn't realize his own intelligence. If he knew how smart he actually was, then he would be able to accomplish so many amazing things in this life. And he's the same age as me, so it's not like it's too late. And it's definitely not too late for you. But if you think that just because you didn't get the highest grades in school, or because people around you maybe told you that you're not the smartest person, that means that you're not a smart person and you're not capable of actually bringing the vision in your mind into fruition, then you're in your own way. right? At that point, school, no degree, nothing outside of yourself can fix the problem that you have. The problem that you have is internal. And at one point, I had that same problem. You see, when I entered community college, although I had gotten high grades, I still fundamentally didn't believe that I was an intelligent person. This was not a matter of a lack of intelligence, rather, it was a lack of confidence. I lacked confidence until the day that my history professor, shout out to Professor Braden, I know you're not watching this, but if you are by some miracle measure, thank you. You changed my life. And this is one of the reasons why maybe you should try going to college, is because you can connect with people who can instill this confidence within you if you don't have that type of confidence in you right now. You see, I remember during history class, we used to have these primary source document assignments. So basically she would give us a primary source document from a historical time, and we had to do these writing assignments in our journals. Now, I was always a gifted writer. Out of everything in the world of academia, I don't know if I said that right, academia, macadamia, I don't know. But anyways, out of all of the subjects in school, I was always the most gifted at writing. That was the one that came the most natural to me. And as a matter of fact, in high school, that was the only advanced placement AP class that I took, was English. And I still scored very highly in that class. But when I took the AP test, which called for us to write 3 essays in 2 hours for whatever reason, I got a 2 out of 5. A 2 out of 5. If you're not good at math, that's 40%. I basically got a 40 on the AP test, and it shattered my confidence. I decided in that moment that I wasn't a good writer, but when I went to community college and I started doing those primary source document writing assignments in my journal, and then I turned my journal in to Professor Braden, she would write these little notes in my journal. You're a great writer, great writing, etc. I thought she was just saying things just to say them. But one day, she pulled me aside after class, and I didn't know what to expect. Okay, I thought that maybe I had done something wrong or I was falling behind. I didn't know. So she pulls me aside after class and she says, "Hey, what school did you say you want to go to after you finish here at the community college?" And I told her the University of North Texas because it had a high acceptance rate, it was nearby, and it was cheaper. And she said, "Why don't you try to aim for maybe a better school, like the University of Texas at Austin?" And I was like, "Well, why do you say that?" She said, "You're an amazing writer." And it really served to undo some of the conclusions that I had come to from having bombed that AP test. And that really, really instilled a lot of confidence in me. And she actually set aside some office hours for me so that she could help me with my college applications, and she was helping me with my resume. She said that she would write me reference letters, all of that stuff. And like I said, just seeing that she saw that in me, somebody who did have a lot of credentials in her field. Okay, obviously to be a professor, you have to be a very well-educated person, and I imagine she's seen a lot of writing in her day. For her to pull me aside after class and give me that one-on-one motivational speech, basically, that changed my life. That changed the whole trajectory of my life. And although I ended up dropping out, I always took her words with me from there on in. And that's part of the reason why I've published 2 books at the age of 23, and I'm currently working on book number 3. And as a matter of fact, I want to give you a sneak peek of that book.
Your tender look turns pages of this book, like you turn your head when I catch you staring. That sentimental smile, there's simply no comparing you to anyone I've met. Your eyes remind me of intention set before we ever came to be. The seeds beget the flowers and the trees to grow just like we will. As breath of God blows with the wind through mills where tulips grow, where feelings that we show will finally find their bloom, and we will come to know what we silently assume.
Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed English class, but English class is officially dismissed. Now it's time for one of my favorite classes of the day, physical education. But before we start our PE class, I want to share another little story which also illustrates why school, and particularly college, isn't always the best way of learning for some people. You see, when I was in that history class, and once I release this video, by the way, I can never go back to college, as far as I'm aware, because this is, I'm pretty sure, not allowed. And this is the point. But basically, in that same history class that Professor Braden taught, I had a group of people that I did the primary source document assignments with. So basically, the way that it worked was that we would all do sections of the primary source document, and then we would all help each other with the other sections that we didn't do. Here is where things got interesting. There was this one guy, I'm not going to say his name. Even if I remembered his name, I wouldn't say it because I'm not an informant. But he would always cheat off of me. Okay, so he would always basically do nothing. All he did was copy off of my work. The whole class. The whole entire class. The whole semester. And I let him do it. Why? Because it didn't really bother me. Okay, it didn't really matter to me. He seemed like he didn't want to do it. I was going to do it either way. So I figured if I'm going to do it either way, why not let him copy off of my work? I always did that in high school too. I never saw a problem with it. Now, at the end of the semester, he hit me up on Snapchat and he said, "Hey bro, I appreciate you for letting me cop the answers throughout the semester. What's your Cash App?" And I said, "Bro, don't even worry about it. It's cool. I was going to do the work anyways." He said, "Nah bro, what's your Cash App?" I gave him my Cash App and he sent me, I want to say $20, but it might have been $50. It was somewhere in that range. And at the time, I remember thinking, wow, he just paid me for the answers. It wasn't until a few years later, okay, actually pretty recently, that I realized that he literally turned me into his employee for the whole semester. That's basically what he did. That's pretty much all a business is. People who don't have the answers or who don't want to get the answers pay other people who do have the answers or are willing to get the answers money in order for them to be able to get the answers that they're seeking. So instead of spending the time to get the answers, they simply spend the money, i.e. payroll. This is why you get your W-2 form. Okay, they're basically telling you, this is how much money I paid you for the answers and or the work that you've done and that you've given me that I myself didn't want to do. And I always thought that this was insane because obviously if Professor Braden had found out that we were doing that, I'm pretty sure we would have gotten in some serious trouble. We might even gotten kicked out of the school. But this is the way that life works. Okay, that's how the actual world works. And the fact that college discourages this, I understand where they're coming from in that everyone should pull their weight, but perhaps some people pull their weight in a different or more strategic way. I'm not in college right now, so I don't know what the landscape is as far as ChatGPT goes, but anybody in their right mind who is in college right now should be using ChatGPT to do as much of their work as they possibly can. Now, I'm sure that if your professor found out that you're using ChatGPT, they might fail you for the whole class. A class that you have paid for, by the way, that you've paid for with your own money or the government's money. But once you actually get out into the real world, okay, the school of life, you realize that it doesn't make sense to not use ChatGPT. You use all of the resources that you have at your disposal. I'm saying this to say that school does not adequately prepare you for the real world in that regard. This is why school generally produces employees, whereas the school of life generally produces employers. That being said, let's go ahead and get started with this physical education class. Now, like I've said in the past few vlogs, I'm not going to show you my full workout routine yet because I want to dedicate a whole entire video for that. I want to do a whole video for my lower body workout, whole video for my upper body workout, etc. Whole video for my diet, all of that. But I do believe that this should be a part of everybody's curriculum, so I want to give you some general fundamentals to work with. Okay, first of all, always do your stretches. Okay, do your stretches. You don't have to do your stretches for an hour. You don't have to join yoga or anything like that, but do some sort of stretching routine that helps you get your tendons and joints and muscles loose. Because if you don't, you're going to end up in physical therapy like me. Now, in addition to doing your stretches, I want to give you this fundamental principle in terms of working out. The 80-20 rule applies to fitness perhaps more than anything else in life, or at the very least as much as anything else in life. A lot of people, they spend all of this time doing exercises that don't actually move the needle for them. And what you have to understand is that while you can get results that way, you won't get the same results, and you definitely won't get them in the same amount of time. You want to stick to compound movements, multi-joint movements that allow you to integrate multiple muscle groups at a time. This is how you not only save time, but you also get the most possible work done. You can't delegate your workout. This is one of the only things in life that you simply can't delegate. ChatGPT can tell you what workout to do, but it can't do your workout for you. Only you can do that. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a full entire workout routine video, actually multiple workout routine videos here in the near future. But in the meantime, take those two principles to the bank and cash them in.